In just 29 seconds, one of music's biggest legends went from smiling guest to storming off stage after Joy Behar pushed her too far. What started as friendly banter turned into a fiery explosion that left the entire studio speechless. Voices were raised, fingers were pointed, and words were said that can never be taken back. This is the story of how Chaka Khan's appearance on The View went from celebration to total chaos. The lights were bright and the audience was buzzing with excitement as Chaka Khan walked onto the View stage. The music icon looked stunning in a flowing purple outfit, her signature style on full display. The crowd went wild, clapping and cheering for the legendary singer. Whoopi Goldberg stood up to give her a hug, and the other hosts smiled warmly as Chaka took her seat at the table. Joy Behar was sitting at the end, watching with a tight smile on her face. She had her notes in front of her, clearly ready to lead the conversation. As Chaka settled into her chair, adjusting her microphone, Joy wasted no time jumping in. "So Chaka, welcome back to the show," Joy said, her voice already carrying an edge that made some of the other hosts glance at each other. "You've been in the music industry for what, 50 years now? That's a long time." Chaka smiled politely, though something flickered in her eyes. "Yes, it's been an incredible journey. Music has been my life." Right, Joy continued, flipping through her note cards with exaggerated movements. "So I have to ask, because everyone's been talking about it. You recently did an interview where you said something about today's artists not having real talent. Do you remember saying that?" The energy in the room shifted immediately. The other hosts looked uncomfortable. Sunny Hostin leaned back in her chair, and Sarah Haynes picked up her coffee mug, like she needed something to hold on to. Chaka's smile faded just a bit. "That's not exactly what I said," Chaka replied, keeping her voice calm. "What I said was that the music industry has changed, and there's more focus on image and social media than on actual vocal ability and musicianship." Joy let out a sharp laugh that didn't sound friendly at all. "Oh, come on, that's basically the same thing. You're saying young artists today can't sing." "That's not what I'm saying," Chaka said, her voice getting firmer. "I'm saying the industry doesn't prioritize those things the way it used to. There are talented young artists out there, but they're competing with people who become famous just for going viral." Joy leaned forward, and her eyes had that look that regular viewers of the show knew too well. She was about to go in for the attack. "But don't you think that sounds a little bit like, I don't know, an older artist being bitter that the world has moved on? Like maybe you're just upset that younger people don't care about the same things you do?" The audience gasped. Even Whoopi Goldberg's eyes went wide, and she started to open her mouth to say something. But Joy kept going. "I mean, every generation of older artists says the same thing. Oh, music was better in my day. Kids today don't know real talent. It's kind of a tired argument, don't you think?" Chaka Khan sat up straighter in her chair. Her expression changed completely. The friendly, warm look was gone, replaced by something much more serious. "Excuse me? Tired argument? Joy, I've spent 5 decades mastering my craft. I've worked with the greatest musicians and producers in the world. I'm not some bitter old lady yelling at clouds. I'm talking about the difference between real musicianship and manufactured pop stars." "But that's exactly what you are doing," Joy shot back, her voice getting louder. "You're dismissing an entire generation of artists because they don't make music the way you did. That's textbook bitterness." The tension was getting thick. You could feel it in the air. The camera operators were moving in closer, sensing that something big was happening. The other hosts were looking at each other with worried expressions, clearly unsure if they should jump in or let it play out. Chaka took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was like ice. "Joy, with all due respect, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You've never performed a day in your life. You've never stood on a stage and poured your heart out through music. You sit behind this desk and judge people for entertainment, but you don't actually know anything about the music industry." The audience made a collective sound, a mix between a gasp and an ooh. This was not the friendly celebrity interview they expected. Joy's face turned red. She clearly wasn't used to guests fighting back this hard. "Oh, so now I'm not qualified to have an opinion?" Joy snapped. "I've been in entertainment for 40 years. I think I know a thing or two about what makes someone talented. Being in entertainment doesn't mean you understand music." Chaka fired back. "Comedy and music are completely different. And even if they weren't, Having an opinion doesn't mean your opinion is educated or valid. Sarah Haynes tried to jump in, her voice nervous and high. Maybe we should talk about Chaka's new project. I heard you're working on something exciting? But neither Joy nor Chaka paid attention to her. They were locked in now, staring at each other across the table like two boxers in a ring. Joy's jaw was clenched, and Chaka's eyes were blazing. You know what? Joy said, pointing her finger at Chaka. I think the real problem here is that you can't handle criticism. You come on shows like this and expect everyone to just kiss your ass and tell you how amazing you are. But when someone actually questions you, you fall apart. Chaka let out a laugh. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that happens right before something bad goes down. Fall apart? Honey, I've dealt with worse than you in my career. I've been disrespected by record executives, by promoters, by people who actually had power. You think I'm intimidated by a talk show host who gets her kicks from being rude to guests? Whoopi Goldberg finally decided to step in. Ladies, let's take it down a notch. We're all friends here. Are we? Chaka asked, turning to look at Whoopi. Because I came here thinking this was going to be a respectful conversation. And instead I'm being attacked and called bitter by someone who clearly had an agenda before I even sat down. Joy threw her hands up in the air. Oh, here we go. Now I'm the bad guy because I asked a tough question. This is ridiculous. If you can't handle being challenged, maybe you shouldn't go on talk shows. There's a difference between challenging someone and being straight up disrespectful, Chaka said, her voice rising. You didn't ask me a tough question. You called me bitter and washed up on national television. I never said washed up, Joy protested. You implied it, Chaka shot back. Don't play word games with me. I know exactly what you were doing. You wanted to create drama, to get a reaction, so people would talk about this show. Well, congratulations, Joy. You got what you wanted. The audience was dead silent now. Nobody was clapping or laughing. They were all just watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Some people had their phones out, clearly recording what was happening. The producers in the control room were probably losing their minds, trying to decide whether to go to commercial break. Joy's face was getting redder and redder. She was clearly frustrated that she was losing control of the situation. You know what, Chaka? Maybe the reason people say these things about you is because you have an attitude problem. Maybe it's not about your age or your music. Maybe it's just that you're difficult to work with. That was the line that should never have been crossed. Chaka Khan stood up from her chair so fast that it rolled backwards and nearly fell over. The whole studio seemed to jump. Even Joy looked a little scared for a second. Difficult to work with? Chaka's voice was shaking now, but not from fear, from pure anger. You don't know a damn thing about me, or what I'm like to work with. You've never worked with me. You've never been in a studio with me. You've never seen me collaborate with other artists or treat my band with respect. You're sitting here making up stories about my character based on absolutely nothing. Joy stood up too, not wanting to be at a disadvantage. I'm basing it on how you're acting right now. Look at yourself. You're having a complete meltdown on live television because I asked you one question. You didn't ask me a question, Chaka shouted, and yes, she was definitely shouting now. You insulted me and then pretended it was journalism. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that shows exactly what kind of person you are. Sunny Hostin and Alyssa Farah Griffin were both trying to say something, their voices overlapping as they attempted to calm things down. But it was like trying to stop a speeding train with your bare hands. This confrontation had its own momentum now, and nothing was going to stop it. What kind of person am I? Joy demanded, her voice getting shrill. Please, enlighten me, since you apparently know everything. You're a bully, Chaka said, and the word landed like a bomb. You hide behind this table, and you hide behind comedy, and you hide behind the excuse of asking tough questions. But really, you're just a bully who likes to make guests feel small so you can feel big. The audience gasped again. Some people looked shocked. Others looked like they agreed. Joy's mouth dropped open, and for a moment, she didn't seem to have a response ready. But only for a moment. How dare you, Joy finally said, her voice low and dangerous. I've been doing this job for decades. I've interviewed presidents and world leaders and celebrities bigger than you. Nobody calls me a bully. Then maybe they should, Chaka replied. Because that's exactly what you are. And you know what the sad part is? You probably don't even realize it. You probably go home every night thinking you're some kind of hard-hitting journalist, when really you're just mean. Get out, Joy said suddenly. Everyone froze. Chaka stared at her. Whoopi Goldberg stood up from her chair. Joy, wait a minute. No, Joy cut her off, pointing at the exit. I'm done with this. Chaka, you need to leave. If you can't have a civil conversation, then you don't belong on this show. Chaka let out another one of those harsh laughs. A civil conversation? That's rich coming from you. But you know what? I'm happy to leave. I don't want to be here anyway. I thought this was going to be a real interview, not whatever the hell this is. She started to walk away from the table, but then she turned back, and there was one more thing she needed to say. And for the record, Joy, the reason people from my generation criticize what's happening in music today isn't because we're bitter. It's because we care. We care about the art form. We care about preserving something that matters. But you wouldn't understand that, because you don't actually care about anything except getting ratings and making yourself look clever. Security, Joy called out, looking off to the side of the stage. Can we please escort Miss Khan out of the building? I don't need security, Chaka said coldly. I know where the door is. But let me tell you something, Joy. This right here, what you just did, this is going to follow you. People are going to see this, and they're going to see exactly who you really are. Not the funny lady on TV. The real you. She unclipped her microphone and dropped it on the floor. Not threw it, just dropped it, letting it fall and clatter against the studio floor with a loud thud that the audio picked up. Then she walked toward the exit, her head held high, her purple outfit flowing behind her like a cape. The other hosts were all talking at once now, trying to process what just happened. Whoopi was shaking her head. Sunny had her hand over her mouth. Sarah looked like she might cry. Alyssa was just staring at Joy with an expression that was hard to read. Joy sat back down in her chair, trying to compose herself, but her hands were shaking. Well, she said, her voice not quite steady. That was certainly something. When we come back, but Chaka Khan wasn't done. She stopped at the exit, turned around one more time, and her voice carried across the entire studio. You know what your problem is, Joy? You think being mean is the same thing as being smart. But it's not. It just makes you mean. And with that, she walked through the door and was gone. The studio fell into complete chaos. The audience was buzzing. People were talking over each other, and the producers were clearly screaming into the host's earpieces. The camera stayed on Joy for a moment, and her face was a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and something that might have been regret. But it was too late for regret. The damage was done. Chaka Khan had come to the View expecting a celebration of her legendary career, and instead, she got ambushed by a host who wanted to create controversy. And create controversy she did, but not in the way she probably intended. Because now everyone was talking about what Joy had done, how she'd treated a legend with disrespect, how she'd let her ego get in the way of a good interview. Whoopi tried to salvage the situation, turning to the camera with a forced smile. Well, folks, things got a little heated there. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll try to have a calmer conversation about, other topics. Stay with us. The second they cut to commercial, the studio exploded. The hosts all started talking to each other, some of them clearly angry at Joy. The audience was on their phones, already posting about what they'd just witnessed. The producers rushed onto the stage, trying to figure out how to handle the rest of the show. And somewhere outside the studio, Chaka Khan was probably getting into her car, shaking her head at the whole ridiculous situation. She'd been in the entertainment industry for 5 decades. She'd dealt with difficult people before. But this was something else. This was a talk show host who had completely forgotten that her job was supposed to be having conversations with people, not tearing them down for sport. The show eventually came back from commercial, and Joy tried to act like nothing had happened, but everyone could see she was rattled. The rest of the episode was awkward and uncomfortable, with the other hosts trying to steer clear of any controversial topics, and Joy being unusually quiet. But the real story was already out there, spreading across social media like wildfire. Videos of the confrontation were being shared thousands of times. People were taking sides, debating who was right and who was wrong. Most people seemed to be on Chaka's side, calling out Joy for being unnecessarily hostile to a guest who came on the show in good faith. Some people tried to defend Joy, saying she was just doing her job, asking tough questions that needed to be asked. But most people weren't buying it. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful, and Joy had crossed that line the moment she called Chaka bitter and implied she was washed up. The thing is, Chaka Khan didn't need the view. She's a legend with 10 Grammy Awards and a career that speaks for itself. She came on the show as a favor, to promote her work and connect with fans. She didn't need the exposure, and she certainly didn't need the drama. Joy, on the other hand, seemed to think she needed to prove something, to show that she could take down even the biggest stars. But what she proved instead was that being rude to guests isn't the same as being a good interviewer. Real journalists know how to ask difficult questions while still treating their subjects with respect. They know how to challenge people without insulting them. They understand that the goal is to have a conversation, not to win a fight. Joy Behar forgot all of that in her eagerness to create a memorable moment. And she got her memorable moment, all right, but not the kind she probably wanted. She got the kind of moment where everyone remembers how badly she behaved, how she let her ego get in the way of her professionalism, how she drove a legendary artist off her show. The confrontation lasted less than 10 minutes from start to finish, but it felt like an eternity. Every second was filled with tension, with words that couldn't be taken back, with damage being done to reputations and relationships. It was the kind of television moment that people would be talking about for months, if not years. And through it all, Chaka Khan remained dignified. Even when she was angry, even when she was shouting, she never lost her composure completely. She said what needed to be said. She stood up for herself, and then she left. She didn't throw things or curse up a storm or have a complete meltdown. She simply refused to be disrespected and walked away. That takes strength. That takes character. And it's probably why so many people were on her side when the dust settled. Because everyone has been in a situation where someone treated them badly, where someone insulted them or belittled them or made them feel small. And most people wish they had the courage to do what Chaka did, to stand up and say, "I don't have to take this," and walk away with their head held high. The show ended eventually, with the hosts looking exhausted and the audience still buzzing about what they'd witnessed. As people filed out of the studio, they were all talking about the same thing. Not about the other segments, not about the other topics that were discussed, just about Chaka Khan and Joy Behar and the explosive argument that nobody saw coming. By that evening, the clip had gone viral. News outlets were covering it, entertainment shows were analyzing it, social media was on fire with opinions and hot takes. Some people made memes. Others wrote think pieces about respect and professionalism in media. Everyone had something to say. And at the center of it all were two women who had very different ideas about how that interview should have gone. Joy Behar, who thought she was conducting hard-hitting journalism but came across as unnecessarily cruel. And Chaka Khan, who came expecting a friendly conversation but ended up having to defend her entire legacy against someone who seemed determined to tear her down. The truth is, this confrontation didn't need to happen. If Joy had approached the topic with curiosity instead of judgment, if she'd asked Chaka to explain her perspective instead of attacking it, if she'd remembered that her job is to draw out interesting stories from her guests rather than make herself the star, none of this would have occurred. They could have had a fascinating conversation about how the music industry has changed, about the challenges facing new artists, about the balance between artistic integrity and commercial success. Instead, Joy chose confrontation over conversation, and she paid the price for it. Her reputation took a hit that day. People who used to enjoy her no-nonsense style started to question whether there was a line between being direct and being cruel, and whether Joy had crossed that line. Regular viewers of the show started to notice a pattern in how she treated certain guests, especially those who were older or from different generations. Meanwhile, Chaka Khan's reputation only grew stronger. People respected her for not taking any disrespect, for standing up for herself, for refusing to be bullied by someone who should have known better. Her fans rallied around her, and even people who weren't familiar with her music gained a new appreciation for her after seeing how she handled herself in that situation. The whole incident became a teaching moment about respect, about professionalism, about how we treat legends who paved the way for the entertainment we enjoy today. It became a conversation about ageism in media, about how older artists are often dismissed or patronized, about the importance of recognizing experience and talent, even when times change. But most of all, it became a story about two women who couldn't find common ground, who let a simple disagreement escalate into a full-blown confrontation, who both probably wish they could go back and handle things differently. Though knowing Joy Behar, she probably thinks she did nothing wrong. That's often how it goes with people who have been doing something for so long that they can't imagine they might need to change their approach. As for Chaka Khan, she probably went home that night, called her friends and family, vented about what happened, and then moved on with her life. Because when you're a legend with 5 decades of success behind you, one bad interview doesn't define you. Your body of work defines you. Your talent defines you. Your integrity defines you. And all of those things remained intact, even after walking off The View. The show itself had to deal with the fallout for weeks afterward. Questions from journalists, statements from publicists, awkward moments when other guests brought it up. And every time someone mentioned it, it reminded viewers of that uncomfortable day when Joy Behar crossed a line and paid the price for it by having one of the most legendary singers in history walk off her show in disgust, leaving behind nothing but a dropped microphone and a studio full of shocked faces.